Samsung's Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus are finally here, and they may look a lot like the Galaxy S8, but there's plenty of changes under the hood that warrant a closer look. The design really hasn't changed much from the Galaxy S8, and that's evident from the front. You still have this infinity display. The 6.2-inch screen is the same as the 6.2-inch on the Galaxy S8 Plus, but Samsung is quick to point out that the major changes here are refining the design, specifically over here at the top. On the S8, these sensors are a lot more visible and kind of jarring, as some would say. It's hardly visible here, and really you can only notice that front-facing camera. But everything else is a lot darker, so it's a lot more sleeker, and it sort of feels like the display is blending in with that top bezel. Speaking of the bezels also have been trimmed down ever so slightly, so this phone is actually slightly shorter than the Galaxy S8 Plus. It's hardly noticeable, but basically you're getting more screen with a smaller body, and that's always good news. The power button is in a pretty good spot that we can access, but the volume rocker is a little harder to reach. We often have to shift our grasp a little, and it kind of feels like we're making the phone, there's a lot higher chance that could fall out of our hands. So we're not really fans there, and we kind of wish it was here. But over here is the infamous Bixby button, which right now, if I press it, it's not going to do anything because I turned Bixby off, which we'll get to in a little bit. Basically, this will open up Bixby, the home button. Basically, if you look at this screen right here, that's the screen that will open. But what is available still is if you press and hold, Bixby will come around and you can ask it questions. But again, we'll get to Bixby very soon. Over on the back is where you really see the major changes here, over from the Galaxy S8 Plus. Specifically, the dual camera display is the first ever for a Galaxy S series. We first saw it on the Galaxy Note 8. And they're pretty similar, except there are some changes that we'll get to when we talk about the camera. But of course, the fingerprint sensor is here what we want to really focus on, because last year's phones had the fingerprint sensor up here, and there was a lot of complaints about it because it was hard to reach. But here, it's a very good position that's easy to reach. At the same time, we still think Samsung could have refined this a little bit more because it's a little too small. I have thick fingers, so it doesn't feel as nice putting that on there. At the same time, this whole frame is part of the camera, so oftentimes I find myself touching the lens, and that's kind of annoying because I don't really have that with any other phone, and the camera app constantly keeps telling me to make sure the camera isn't smudged. But I feel like if Samsung had moved that a little lower, perhaps we would never even have that problem. The screen is almost the same as last year's. There are some improvements to the panel, the AMOLED panel specifically, but it's same 2560 by 1440p resolution, and you know, as you can see, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. It's really bright. It can get really bright, as Samsung even warns you. And colors just pop. They feel really accurate and not even that much oversaturated like we've seen on previous Samsung panels. But at the same time, they can also get really dim. And overall, it's just a great viewing experience, especially with that bezel-less infinity display experience. And what's also new with the Galaxy S9 is that Samsung finally has a stereo sound tuned by AKG. So before we used to just have the bottom firing speakers over here, but now the stereo speakers work in tandem with this earpiece up top. So working with that and this bottom firing speaker you see right here. So let's take a quick look at how that sounds. Of course, it might not translate well in video, but so that really is room-filling sound, and we still would have liked to see this bottom firing speaker maybe over here so that you're still, it's directed at you when you're watching movies and video, but still, this is better than nothing, and it definitely is good, clean, loud sound. Those stereo speakers really do help when you're watching videos, especially with HDR content, so you're getting this fully cinema-like video watching experience. This is the first smartphone we're testing with Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 processor. Of course, the S9 Plus also has 6 gigs of RAM as opposed to 4 gigs of RAM on the regular S9. And from our experience, performance is pretty much great. There's hardly any issues that we've had scrolling through media. Going throughout the operating system is also incredibly quick. Apps open quickly. We do occasionally encounter stutter throughout the OS, but especially here with Bixby. Of course, it doesn't seem to want to show it right now, but Bixby generally takes quite a long time to load and open when we press the Bixby button if it's enabled. So that's something to note, and it just might be some software kinks and with Samsung Experience 9 user interface as well. It's games performance where we see massive improvement over last year. Games are significantly better looking and performance is almost flawless with barely any issues at all. As you can see, we're playing the latest Tekken game and it certainly looks great, and it certainly is flawless in performance, as you can see, and that doesn't change the fact that I'm a terrible player. The camera is the most important part of the Galaxy S9 and the S9 Plus because they're quite different over last year's, which didn't really improve upon the Galaxy S7 camera. As you can see, the difference here between the S9 Plus and the S9 is that the S9 Plus has a dual camera system. But even so, we're still more fans with the camera system that both these phones have. The cool thing here is that both cameras have a variable aperture, which means that there are two circular plates that constrict light, which enables two different apertures, f1.5 and f2.4. So that means with f2.4, it's meant for daylight shots where there already is a lot of light available, and your shots are going to be extremely detailed. With the f1.5 aperture, it's going to be kick in when it's requiring a lot more light, so basically at night. And you end up with fuzzier photos, so they're not that sharp, but of course they're providing so much more light that you can actually see a lot more, and they're photos that you typically would want to share, and we'll get to that later. You can actually manually change the aperture by yourself by going to the Pro mode and tapping on aperture. And there's a slight change you can see, but basically you can swap between 2.4 and 1.5. But the point is that in auto mode, which most people will use, it'll automatically switch. So right now it's probably going to shoot with f2.4, and if it requires more light, then it'll automatically kick into f1.5. So this is an example of a photo it was incredibly dark in the moment at Barcelona. This is of the Barcelona Cathedral. It was really dark, but the f1.4 aperture really helped get a lot of the shot that you really couldn't see with any other phone. For example, this is what the Pixel 2 XL captured. It's a lot more grainier, clearly a lot darker, and the coloring is completely off. But this is a lot more brighter, and you can see a lot more detail. So there's actually a slow motion video mode that can now take 960 frames per second. It works really well. It's in 720p, so the resolution isn't as great, but at the same time, you're able to capture amazing slow motion videos that you really can't do on any of the phones except, say, Sony Xperia devices. There's also an AR emoji mode that tries to mimic what Apple did with Animoji. The cool thing is you can actually create your own. This is supposed to be me, and you can also save that as GIFs, animated GIFs, and animated emojis that you can send in messaging apps. But this video recording feature, basically, it works okay. It doesn't really capture the movements like Animoji does with Apple's special True Depth camera at the top of the iPhone X, but this is a pale imitation. Let's leave it at that. So the two different features that you'll have on this S9 Plus compared to the regular S9 is live focus and 2x optical zoom, which you can see right here. 2x optical zoom is pretty simple. You're basically zooming optically twice, so you're getting a perfectly clear and detailed shot like you would with a normal photograph. So it's the opposite of digital zoom, which is just zooming on the standard photo. So 2x zoom is definitely very handy. Live focus is also sort of like Apple's and Google Pixel's portrait mode, where basically if you, say for example, put my hand or any type of subject, it'll try and use depth to blur out the background, so you get like this nice depth effect. Of course, you have to wait to see live focus ready, snap a shot, and you can also customize the background blur and more even when you're in the gallery app. You can even swap to seeing the wide angle photo, so it's always capturing two shots in case you didn't really like the live focus image. We had some issues with live focus not being completely clear, but Samsung's working on getting us an answer as to why that's the case. One thing that really impressed us with the Galaxy S9's camera is multi-frame noise reduction. It's a new image processing technology that Samsung's employing to get rid of as much noise as possible in the photograph. And it's actually really doing a really great job. For example, in this photo, if you look at the sky, of course there's noise, but it still looks like a really well-blended sky, very close to real life. And if you take a look at the Pixels sky, yes, there's more color and some of the clouds are a little more distinguishable, but it's really ruined by the amount of noise that's in the sky. And again, let's just compare from here to there. This just looks almost like a painting, almost close to real life, and it's the photo that we'll definitely share over the Pixels photo. And of course, there's still Bixby. You can customize Bixby Home to sort of show what you want to see, things from calendar events to Facebook trending stories and all sorts of other things. We don't really think it's that useful. Neither is, using Bixby to open Facebook. There we go, hang on. Open Facebook. You just see how long it takes to do that. It doesn't really feel worth it when I could just easily go over to the Facebook app and open it myself. So really not much has changed with Bixby there, but there are certain improvements that are kind of neat with Bixby Vision. And to get access to that, you have to jump right into the camera and tap on this Bixby icon right here. And you can see a bunch of new additions to Bixby Vision. Some things have always been there since, for example, and it's a little slow right now. We're in makeup mode, and unfortunately, I guess I'm going to be trying this out on camera. Basically, as you can see, it's mapping makeup to my face, and this is something that might be neat for people who like trying out makeup. This technology is already available on apps, but the company is now bringing it. It's a company called Motiface, and they're bringing it built into the Samsung phone, so you can actually buy whatever you like straight from this mode. But let's quickly get the camera off of me. And this is basically some basic image text recognition, which is available previously. What else is new is basically food. So if you have some food in front of you, it can try and detect it and tell you how many calories is in it. We haven't found it to detect the type of food completely accurately, so it might not be that useful. But we also do like the wine feature, which was present before, but basically lets you scan a wine bottle and it'll tell you exactly what the brand is. And there's a few more options, like with shopping. Now it includes Nordstrom as an option and Costco, and image search is improved. But more or less, we think we're never really going to use these features, and we're not really sure what the point of Bixby still is on the Galaxy S9. There's also another feature called Intelligent Scan, which is basically using the iris scanner as well as the face scanner to identify your face and iris for a more secure unlocking mechanism. And you can actually use it to open some apps, like your banking app, for example. Basically, it works kind of like Face ID, where you'll see that scanner up there and then it just unlocks and gets you right to your home screen. No need to swipe or anything like that. And it's more or less accurate, sometimes failing in the daytime, but it does still work at night. So that's the Galaxy S9 and the Galaxy S9 Plus. We really like the Galaxy S9 size, but we think it's worth buying the Galaxy S9 Plus for the extra camera and just the versatility of the 2x optical zoom and that live focus feature. The Galaxy S9 Plus costs $840 and the S9 costs $720, and they'll be available officially on March 16th.